Hello, everybody. Some years ago now, I stumbled across an old Christmas edition of the New Statesman magazine. It was from December 1980 by Duncan Campbell. This guy found his way into a labyrinth of totally secret government tunnels by entering through an inspection cover on Bethnal Green Road. It says, "Implausibly disguised as a touring cyclist, I have often visited these tunnels. An access shaft emerges usefully on a traffic island in a public highway, Bethnal Green Road, E1. He cycled around, mapping it all out, marking all the significant installations and also all the exits to street level. When I got my hands on these maps, I can tell you I found them beyond fascinating, especially because I just went around visiting everywhere. And I did notice some things that the original author had missed. But also these maps, they drove me totally insane. Bear in mind, these are from 1980, so they're fairly organic. From what I can tell, he drew lots of small maps on the fly over many weeks, then combined them all together and overlaid it on a warped photocopy of a London A to Z. Luckily, I'm in the year 2025 and I have a decent computer, so I fixed the map. Let's float down to East London, which is a lovely place, by the way, on the search for a suspicious manhole cover on Bethnal Green Road. I'm in Shoreditch today. It's a lovely place, especially early in the morning when the criminals are still asleep. And I'm going down to Bethnal Green Road. I actually came here before, a few years back, to find this manhole cover, and I thought I'd found it. But when I got home and started to look into a little bit more research, I started to doubt. Bethnal Green Road and Sclater Street, and we're looking for a traffic island with a manhole cover. Well, that is Bethnal Green Road. It says Sclater Street like there, but it's actually here. So we're looking for like a traffic island between the two, but there is no traffic island. If you look at an old map, this one is from 1960, you can see that Sclater Street used to just run along the wall of the station, and there is a little traffic island here. I can overlay some old spy satellite data from 1970 and I can see it, the little traffic island. It's next to Bus Lane. Right next to the bus, oh well, there we go. I think we may have found it. At least, that's what I was thinking before I went home. And then when I got home, I thought, could he even get his bicycle down that hole? I mean, his old Tomahawk, or whatever the hell it is, an 80s bicycle. It's kind of similar to these, really, and I don't know. I don't know if you could comfortably get one of these bicycles down that hole. Maybe you can. There's another thing here as well, which is it's pretty inelegant to, like, for a spy to climb out of there in the middle of a road in a very busy area. I mean, before I started researching this, I didn't realize that this old brick stuff, this used to be the enormous Bishopsgate goods station. So there were marketplaces like all the way down here. So I don't know, that just kind of makes me feel weird. Why would they design a place for spies to invisibly escape in a place that's so visible? You've also got here the old Braithwaite viaduct system, which is a vast
almost like a superstructure of brick, like arches, corridors, tunnels. So I thought I'd look at an old map to see if there are any pre-existing tunnels. That would make sense of that one over there.
So when I look at this old map, I can see underneath Bishopsgate Good Station there's an underground tunnel with a double entrance on Bethnal Green Road. Probably a bit like old pub cellar doors, but maybe slightly larger, big metal ones used for ferrying coal, essentially, in and out of the station. Probably quite a busy thoroughfare during the daytime, and it's opposite the junction of Ebor Street.
On the wall of the station, over there, number 33. Number 33. Now when I see a number 33, I always check. Even if it seems like a silly coincidence, I will check. And check I did. And rabbit hole I did find. Like a moth to a flame. You're not
just not allowed to let you do that.
Why?
Willingly.
Why?
Willingly. So
Why?
as long as you're going to keep us in the shop.
Is there something you're hiding?
I couldn't tell you that.
Now let's get the hell out of here before we get strung up and robbed. I can't take the lower path to get into town, but I can take the upper path, can't I? I'm in Trafalgar Square now, as you may have noticed. I'm up on these steps. Nobody ever climbs up onto these steps anymore. As soon as I came up here, suddenly lots of people started swarming about, I think, considering climbing up here. The National Gallery. Running beside the National Gallery, underneath that road over there, is the Northern Line, going into Charing Cross Northern Line station. From behind us is the Bakerloo line coming from Piccadilly Circus. It runs under here, about 20 metres below, and it goes in there into Charing Cross Bakerloo line station. But also running under here, but about 30 metres down, is the old Jubilee line station, which they built here. It's underneath all of this, right underneath here. An enormous station where the Jubilee line used to terminate at Trafalgar Square. I need to hop over there. There we go. So the old Jubilee line station is beneath here, and it was known to be quite a vast structure. All three stations nowadays are all kind of joined together, and they use part of the old Trafalgar Square station nowadays. But the old Trafalgar Square station has all sorts of underground storage. Particularly, it has storage rooms that come from the back of the station all the way out to here. And in one of those storage rooms, there is a hatch that goes another 70 metres below the ground to 100 metres down to a secret tunnel with the post office designation Q Whitehall.
You know this thing that we call the British Telecom Tower? Well, British Telecom came around by splitting the telecommunications part off from what was the General Post Office, a government department from 1660 to 1969. They built the post office tower, and before that, in total secret, vast castles of underground telecommunications infrastructure, like the Faraday Citadel near Blackfriars Bridge, with underground walls 7 foot thick. The Kingsway Trunk Exchange, a self-contained, deep-level military bunker, a bit like a submarine lurking beneath the surface. These huge secret facilities attracted close to zero public scrutiny for 40 years, and D-notices were strictly applied to the press so they were never mentioned. At great expense, these things were built and run as a continuity of government programme. The map shows 12 miles of deep-level tunnels, 21 entry and exit points, and 7 major installations, all built in almost total secret by the General Post Office under emergency powers. The construction of the most well-known parts under Whitehall was called Post Office Scheme 2845, and on completion was designated Q Whitehall. It connected the Admiralty, the Old War Office, the Ministry of Defence, and the Cabinet War Rooms in Downing Street. And then they built an extension down to Horse Ferry Road called Whitehall to house a very special high-tech communication system that was only for really cool people.
You know when you dial 999 in this country for emergencies, it actually connects you directly to a totally separate telephone exchange, like an emergency exchange. Hence the weird 3-digit number 999. That's the river wall and the Lambeth Bridge over there. I'm going to Horse Ferry Road. Post-war, the General Post Office built down here a top secret telephone exchange called the Federal Telephone Exchange. There was one mention of it in Parliament in 1960. For many decades, from any public phone on a public phone network, you could actually dial 333 and connect to the most top secret, high-tech telephone exchange that Britain had ever built. I think that if the telecommunications protocol in this country actually allowed you to use 2 numbers rather than 3, like 999, then the special secret telephone number back then would have just been 33. That way it would actually match the address on the building. Just proof that it's a slightly warm day. Now imagine it, oh my god, I'm so sweaty. Imagine I was a young, well, yeah, you'll have to imagine for that. Imagine I was a young Navy gumshoe, a spy in counter-espionage, working for the Royal Navy. No license to kill, but a license to work undercover at a daily newspaper. And if I want orders, I just find a public telephone box and make a call, except obviously in 1955 they didn't have to deal with people queuing up for selfie. Oh my god, this is disgusting. So you dial 333. So if I wanted to get underground, bear in mind I'm deep undercover. I can't just, walk into Downing Street and ask them if it's okay that I go downstairs for a bit. No, I'd have to use a tradesman's entrance. And luckily for me, they're scattered all around here, marked by a cryptic cipher. If only I could remember what it was. Oh, there it is. Silver Cross. That's the Royal Navy headquarters, obviously that's why that guy is there. And in the Navy, if you're a very, very good boy, what they call distinguished service, they will give you a Silver Cross. And the tunnel isn't here. This is just a signpost. The actual tunnel is around the back here. You can see there it's still a functional telephone exchange. And of course the BT sign, British Telecom, still says telephone exchange above the door. And it's a very unassuming, very unobvious building that you would kind of just not even blink at. The back door of the pub, by the way, is, I can't point like that, just there. So I think the idea is, you go in the pub, you order a drink, and then you slip out the back and straight in through that door. And if you go through that door, you will find that there's a lift that goes down 100 meters to the warm underbelly of air-conditioned, quiet tunnels. And from here, the quickest place to go is Chinatown. So this is the back door of the Soho telephone exchange. It's one of those kind of buildings you don't really notice. People just walk past not thinking that it's anything. This is the back. Around the front is a thing called China Exchange, which is number 32, and Silver Time, a casino thing, which is number 34, making the actual exchange number 33, Gerrard Street. Next we'll go to Covent Garden. You look at this lovely old building called Police Station and Magistrates Court on Bow Street, behind the Royal Opera House. The address of that building is number 28 Bow Street, so that's not what we're looking for, although it is nice. And you've got to understand that the buildings that we're looking for are not this nice or this extravagant. They're buildings that you wouldn't really notice, you would walk past without even blinking. Like this one, next door. An old telephone exchange. Number 30 is that on the corner there. If you look on the old map, you can see this unit here is 31 and 32, and that one is 34, which means that this black hole, this void that seems to drag your eyes deep underground, is number 33. Close at hand, shafts GA and BC, complete with lift, now emerge in Holborn Telephone Exchange. The entrance to this building is a mere 30 yards from our Great Turnstile offices. So that is number 10 Great Turnstile, which was the headquarters of the New Statesman magazine in the 1980s. And he said that the entrance that he was using from the office was 30 yards down the road. Which is just down there. Let's go and have a look. Down there, maybe? It says DOS 61. I have no idea what that means. Well, I don't know how they got in. Maybe one of these doors was accidentally levered open, in air quotes. Maybe this homeless person who's living here, it's actually MI5. Anyway, that building is the BT Archives nowadays. The address is 270 High Holborn. So that is not the big boy on this road. This is High Holborn. The big boy on this road is the Kingsway Trunk Exchange, the underground military base, that lurking submarine. Let's see if we can find it just by using instinct, shall we? There's 49, 37. Aha! Chancery Station House. It's this weird, anonymous looking door. In this scenario, we are the moth, and that is the flame. The Kingsway Exchange is almost totally decommissioned nowadays, and many people have actually been down there and toured it and made videos on YouTube, which you can find. And it's a very, very bizarre place, and by all accounts, a bit of a party zone. in its day. What I find interesting about this place is that although it was a deep level military base from the 1940s, it wasn't actually until the decades after the war that it developed into an enormous underground submarine complex. Look, there's a part of it sticking out of the ground. Yeah, sure, it's acceptable and normal in wartime to congregate some of the most violently vicious minds that the country has and get them to turn that violence against the enemy. And my question is, oh my God, my question is, what do you do with all those people after the war? When the existential threat from outside the country is gone, who do you aim all of these weaponized people at? What do you do with them? Well, there's a clue just down here. Well, this is Shoe Lane, or Gumshoe Lane, you could call it. And you see a lot of modern buildings nowadays, but there's a congregation of exits here, 4 of them, very close together, Goldman Sachs. But in the post-war period, if I was here, I'd actually be in sort of like an industrial area. This was printing works and printing warehouses where all the newspapers were stored before they were packaged off and distributed. And in those days, I would be actually in amongst 3 different, a triangle of publications, where Goldman Sachs is, that was the daily, that was the Evening Standard. That black one over there, that was the Daily Express. And then this great big stone building here, that was the Daily Telegraph. The tunnel entrances were 2 of them down the bottom here, seemingly one inside the Daily Telegraph and one inside the Daily Express, or just around the back. And the other 2 were essentially in the warehouses that were behind the newspapers. So question, who was in a position to set up post-war spies with jobs in some of the biggest daily newspapers? Well, the answer to that question is the entrance to a different rabbit hole that basically starts with a question. Was Winston Churchill friends with any newspaper owners? And our survey says, other than Brendan Bracken, who we know about already, it was the Daily Express, the Evening Standard, and the Daily Telegraph.
Let me do a simple analysis of this map. Let's mark the political area in purple. We know why the exits are there. In red is the military base. We understand why the exits are there. The orange marks all the major communications infrastructure, and we know why those exits are there. So that leaves the tradesmen's entrances for invisible personnel movement. They're scattered everywhere, which makes sense, but these 4 right in the centre can stand out. And there are no 33s here, so that stands out as well. As if it wasn't built as part of the original structure, but added for a purpose in the decades after the 50s. And what about the occurrence of 33 in all this? Well, I guess it depends on who you ask, but if you ask me, I would say that the people who were put in charge of planting the initial seed of constructing all this designed it as a great work in the context of Freemasonry. 33 suggests the Scottish rite of Freemasonry, but who knows? But it was likely a group of men who shared a common appreciation of occult numerology. But that doesn't necessarily mean that these tunnels had any evil intent, at least when they were first built. It just means that a group of men, probably in the General Post Office, truly thought that what they were building would change the world. And so they wanted to leave a signature on their work. I think what they did here did change the world in a small way, and not necessarily in a good way. I think maybe it changed the world in a good way and a bad way, in perfect balance.